We've been talking for the past couple of months about knowing God, really knowing God. Jesus himself said, "This people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me." And so we've been looking at the reality. It's possible to say that we know God, to honor God with our lips, to speak of God, to call ourselves Christians, and yet not to actually know him. And so we've been looking at the life of David to understand what does it really mean to know God, and what does it actually mean to be known by God. And David in Scripture is presented to us as a leader, a figure, a man who knew God, who was close to God. And so we've been looking to his life for some understanding of what does it mean for us to know God. And so we're actually about to close this series out. We're going to end it next week on Easter Sunday, where we'll look at the most known and beloved story in the life of David, the story of David and Goliath, the one that is most familiar to most people who have heard of King David before. And so that's where we'll end next week on Easter Sunday. By the way, let me mention a couple things about Easter just so that you are aware of them. First of all, we're having a Good Friday service here on Friday night at 7 o'clock right here in this room. It's a more somber and solemn kind of service where we remember the death of Christ, and so it will be more reflective in nature. And then Sunday morning, one service, 10 o'clock, at the Holland Performing Arts Center downtown. Do not come here. No one will be here. We want you to be with us downtown at the Holland. Please remember. The doors open at 9. We decided to just open the place up early so we can enjoy hanging out together, being there, enjoying the space that the Holland is. The service will start at 10. And then afterwards, we're going to baptize a bunch of people in the courtyard there at the Holland. And so plan appropriately for your plans and travel that morning. And we're going to enjoy celebrating Christ's resurrection together at the Holland. And we'll talk about David and Goliath. So what I wanted to do this week then as we prepare to end this sermon series is to look at the very end of David's life. We've been looking at all these instances in David's life where he knew God and where we learn about his relationship with God. I wanted to look at the very end of David's life. And so that brings us from the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel to the book of 1st Chronicles, where we read about David getting ready to hand over the kingdom to his son Solomon. And the writer of the book of Chronicles wants to highlight at the end of David's life, as he sort of chronicles David's heritage and lineage, he wants to put a special emphasis on David's generosity. This text that you just heard read is about giving and generosity. It is David giving of his resources to the Lord. This is part of what it means to know God. And so we are going to talk this morning about giving and generosity, which I'm excited about for two reasons. Number one, because I get to land right in the middle of all the stereotypes you have about church. Right, for those of you who are non-Christians or skeptics, exactly what you thought church is about is talk about money. Right? So I'm glad I get to be that guy this morning and just reinforce that stereotype. But secondly, here's why I am excited about it, because anytime we talk about money, it brings us right against probably what is the dominant cultural idol in the world that we live in. Right? The United States of America is founded on prosperity and affluence and success and security. And so anytime we talk about money, we're coming right up against one of the deepest idols in our own hearts and in the culture that we live in. And so look, we honestly don't talk about money very much, but we do preach the Bible. And so when the Bible talks about money, we talk about it. And this is one of those times, one of those seasons, one of those mornings, as we've looked at the life of David, we come to the end of his life, and where the writer wants to put the emphasis is on David's generosity. So what does it mean to know God? I want to help you see this morning that knowing God makes us generous. That's the big idea, the sort of foundational statement I want you to see. Knowing God makes us generous. Here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that only people who know God are generous. In fact, the reality is the world is full of people who do not know God, who don't worship God, and are very generous. And that's just God's common grace. It's a good thing that we live in a world where people really and truly are generous. So I'm not saying that it's only Christians who are generous, but what I am saying is that knowing God makes us distinctly and uniquely generous. Here's what I'm saying, to say it another way. If you were to take a cross-section of society, what you'd find is that there are some people who are very generous, there are other people who are very selfish and greedy and stingy, and there are probably a number of people in between somewhere on the spectrum. That's what you'd find if you took a cross-section of society. But what I'm saying this morning is that if you take a cross-section of the church, of people who know God, what you ought to find across the board is generosity. That among God's people, there ought to be a distinct and a unique generosity, that we should be known as a generous people. That there would be no one among us who is not generous and open-handed and open-hearted and a giving kind of person, because knowing God makes us generous. So what about you this morning? Are you a generous person? Are you a giver? Are you open-handed with your resources, with your time, with your talent, with your treasure, with all that God has entrusted to you in life? Let's look once again at the life of David and see what God has to teach us about generosity. I want you to see three things in this picture of David at the end of his life. I want you to see that knowing God changes your mindset for giving, your motivation for giving, and your method of giving. Your mindset, your motivation, and your method. First of all, I want you to see that knowing God changes your mindset for giving. Look with me at 1 Chronicles 29, verse 11. David here is praying a prayer of praise and thanksgiving to God after he and his people have given to the Lord. And notice what he says in verse 11. Yours, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the victory and the majesty, for all that is in the heavens and in the earth is yours. Skip over to verse 14. All things come from you, and of your own we have given you. For we are strangers before you and sojourners, as all our fathers were. Our days on the earth are like a shadow, and there is no abiding. O Lord our God, all this abundance that we have provided for building you a house for your holy name comes from your hand and is all your own. So David reiterates throughout his prayer, God, all this that we're giving, it's all yours. It's from you in the first place. It's yours anyway. See, knowing God changes your mindset from ownership to stewardship. A mindset of ownership says, this is my stuff. I've worked for it. I earned it. I deserve it. I will protect it. But see, a mindset of stewardship says, this is all someone else's stuff. It's grace. It's gift. It's given to me as a responsibility. And so I'm responsible to manage it, to steward it well. Right? The reality is, what's true of God's generosity toward us? God has been generous with us. God has given freely to us. All that we have is a gift of God. And so when we see that, when we come to realize all the stuff that we have, whether it's material resources, personal resources, education, opportunity, all of those things are given to us by a gracious God. When we come to see that, it changes our mindset. We begin to realize we're stewards that have been given responsibility for those things. We're not owners who get to grasp them and clutch them and control them as though they were ours. See, David knows God. David knows that from him and through him and to him are all things. David knows in him we live and move and have our being. He knows that the baseline truth of the gospel narrative is that we are not our own. We belong to God. And so David acknowledges all this stuff that we have, God, it's all stuff you've given us anyway. It's all yours. So listen to me. If you're here this morning and you're a Christian, here's what this means for you. Your house isn't your house. It's God's house. Your car is not your car. It's God's car. Your education is not your education. It's God's education. Your paycheck isn't your paycheck. It's God's paycheck. I want you to say that with me. Say, it's God's paycheck. Now I want you to say it again like you believe it. It's God's paycheck. Yeah, we're going to have church up in here this morning. We got to get this clear, right? Because here's the deal. Our culture and our hearts want to tell us, this is mine. And we have to remind ourselves the truth is what we have is God's. We've been entrusted with it. He's given us responsibility for it, and He will hold us accountable for what we do with it. We can be a good steward or a bad steward, a good manager or a bad manager, but either way, we're managing God's resources. God is the owner of everything. And see, knowing God makes you generous because it changes your mindset for giving. It helps you come to the recognition that you are not an owner but a steward, that God has been generous with us, and therefore as redeemed image bearers of God, we are generous with Him and with others. Knowing God changes your mindset for giving. But secondly, knowing God changes your motivation for giving. What's the common motivation for giving in our society? Guilt or obligation, right? I should. Tax incentives, I get a tax break if I do, right? Social pressure, I don't know, somebody told me I should and so I did. Recognition, I want my name on a building, I want a plaque, I want a room named after me, whatever. Now, what is David's motive for giving in this passage? Look at verse 3 of 1 Chronicles 29. In addition to all that I have provided for the holy house as king, I have a treasure of my own of gold and silver. David's talking here about his personal wealth. And because of my devotion to the house of my God, I give it. Because of my devotion. See, David is devoted to God. He loves God. He is a man who is given over to the love of God, the worship of God. What are you devoted to? Are you devoted to your work? Are you devoted to your hobbies? Maybe you're devoted to your family. Maybe you're devoted to maintaining a certain standard of living no matter what it costs. David and his people give because they are wholeheartedly devoted to God. We see this reiterated again in verse 9, not just on David's behalf, but on behalf of the people who are following his example and his call. Look at verse 9. Then the people rejoiced because they had given willingly, for with a whole heart they had offered freely to the Lord. You see that? Willingly, whole heart, freely rejoicing. They're not giving out of obligation. They're not giving out of legalism or performance or expectation. They're giving because they're devoted to God and to His kingdom. And listen, this teaches us something very important about the gospel of Jesus Christ. It shows us that really knowing God, being a Christian, means giving your whole life over to God. See, there's this common fiction, especially in American Christianity, that really what it means to be a Christian is it means to have a certain right belief in your mind, right? That you hold a certain thing, you believe it to be true. So you believe that Jesus died on the cross and rose from the dead. You believe that Jesus is the only way to God, whatever. And there's this perspective that you can believe these things as facts. You can assent to them intellectually in a way that somehow does not have any connection to what you do with the rest of your life. That's simply a fiction. It's not true. What it means to know God is that in seeing the grace of God toward you and God giving himself and giving his son for you, you in response have given yourself over to God. You are wholeheartedly devoted to him. In other words, the gospel is a whole life commitment. God asks for all of you, not part of you, not your ideas, not your intellect, but you. And see, when you have given yourself over to God, when you are devoted to him, when you're a worshiper of him, that's not something you merely do with your mind, it's something you do with all of your life. And these people in this text are joyful in their giving because they've willingly already given themselves over to God. And so giving of their resources is merely an extension of the fact that they have given themselves. See, listen, what you live for is what you'll give for. You like that rhyme? I could keep working that, couldn't I? What you give for is what you live for. Listen, if you live for God and his kingdom, then that's what you'll give to. If you live for your own success, your own security, your own affluence, your own comfort, your own achievement, then that's what you'll give to. That will be reflected in what you do with your resources, your time, your money, your influence. So, just work backward from your bank statement or from your tax return. What does it say about what you're devoted to? What does it say about where your affections are and where your heart is and where your joy is? Are you paying off furniture over at the mart because you bought it with money you didn't have in the first place? Oh, let's not get personal, Pastor. It's just a sermon here, right? Are you spending hundreds of dollars on entertainment and social interaction, being out, eating out, hanging out with friends? Does your standard of living keep growing while your standard of giving flatlines? See, knowing God changes what you live for, which then also changes what you give to. These people are not giving out of obligation, they're giving because what they live for has been changed. They know God, they're devoted to God, they live for God, and their giving follows their heart, just like Jesus said that it does. So if you know God, what you should be seeing in your own life is a growing generosity that comes from a growing devotion to God. The more you see of his goodness, the more you see of his glory, the more you see of how he has given himself to you in Christ, the more your devotion and your worship grows, and that reflects itself and manifests itself in a growing generosity. If your generosity is not growing, then neither is your worship. Knowing God makes you generous because it changes your motivation for giving. You give out of love for God, out of devotion to God. But finally, knowing God changes your method of giving. This is interesting. I want you to look with me at verse 2 of 1 Chronicles 29. David says, "So I have provided for the house of my God so far as I was able, the gold for the things of gold, the silver for the things of silver, and the bronze for the things of bronze, the iron for the things of iron, and wood for the things of wood, besides great quantities of onyx and stones for setting, antimony, colored stones, all sorts of precious stones, and marble." You can see what David's done here is he's categorizing. Right? He's giving a list. He's categorizing and quantifying. Here's all the things I've set apart for the Lord's work. David has set things in order. He has made plans and preparations. His giving is purposeful and deliberate and organized. It's not haphazard. And this is where most of us fail, right? I mean, there's many of us that have good intentions. We really want to honor God by being generous, but we have no discipline. We have no follow-through. We have no fiscal discipline. And so our great intentions go unrealized. Notice David's not showing up and going, "Oh man, we're taking an offering today. I didn't know that was happening. I might have 20 bucks on me. Right? He's thought beforehand about what he has to offer, what he's willing to give. He's set it aside and planned for it and purposed it and categorized it. He has set his financial house in order so that his giving is proactive and thoughtful and not reactive and haphazard. See, when we know God, we want to honor him in how we give, not just in what we give. We want to say to God in how we live, God, you are most important. You are most significant. You're what matters most. You're the one I love most and worship most and honor the most, and I want that to be reflected in what I actually do. Look, if you love a girl and you want to ask her to marry you, you start saving money for a ring. If you love your kids and you want them to have an education, you start planning for that early in life. And likewise, if you love God and you want him to be worshiped, then you plan and purpose about your giving to the Lord. The fact is, a lot of you just aren't doing this very well. As I just pastor Coram Deo, as we as elders here just shepherd the flock, this is the place where I think most of us just fall off the horse. Honestly, I think most of the people in this church are very well-intentioned, but for some reason when it comes to the practice, it becomes a place where we need help. Let me just go on a little statistical sidebar for you and give you some facts and figures and data, all right? We're going to geek out for you number crunchers for a few minutes. So let me give you amazing stats. This is courtesy of our amazing financial team and of Carly, our great financial administrator, who spent hours this week gathering data, because I like data. So here's what you need to know. There are 709 total households within Coram Deo Church. 373 single, 336 families. By the way, that reflects almost exactly the demographic breakdown right now of the United States of America. According to the 2010 census, 48% of America is married, 52% of America is single. That's exactly the percentages within our church, which is encouraging because it means we're actually reaching the culture as it is, okay? So 709 total households. Thus far in 2013, only 293 households have given anything financially. Okay, so there's 416 of you that have not given a dime yet this year. Because you're all giving to other places, I know, but I just want to put that out there, all right? Our average of number of donors each month is 228. That's how many people give on a monthly basis. That's only a third of our church. The median household income in Omaha last year was $59,130. Now, if you've taken a stats class at UNO or Creighton, you know you can slice the numbers a lot of different ways, right? But the median is a good starting point because it means half the people in Omaha live above this, half the people in Omaha live below this, okay? So that's the median income in our city. I don't know if that's true of our church, but we're just going to use the city as a starting point since this is where we live. Which means if the average household in Omaha was tithing, was giving 10% of their income, they'd be giving $5,900 a year. However, the average gift to Coram Deo in 2012 over the course of the year was $2,447. Okay, so listen, I want you to think about your church the way you would think about your football team, okay? So like if the Huskers or the Hawkeyes or whoever you root for, right? They don't have to be in the national championship every year, right? But if they don't crack the top 25, you're not happy. I want you to root for your church that same way. Right, look, we don't have to be the most generous church in Omaha. We don't have to be the most generous church in Acts 29, but we're at the 50th percentile. Like if this is Division I football, we're ranked like 63rd, right? That's not going to fly for most of you people who are hardcore, diehard fans. And so I want you to think about your church in that same way. Now let me give you one more stat. Taking that median income, which again may be accurate, may be a little high or a little low. I don't know how that plays out for our church, but it's a valid average for our city. If just half of the 709 households in Corumdale were tithing at that level, it would increase our annual budget by almost $1 million. $1 million! Do you know how many churches we could plant for $1 million? Now, look, some of you guys are like, hey, I don't make 59 grand a year, so your stats are all messed up, so don't mess with me, right? But listen to me. The point is not to do the math in your head and figure out if everybody in the room hits that median average. The point is this: if all of us were actually giving on the income we actually have, it would make a significant difference in the resources that we have available together to invest in the mission of God. I just want you to know that. I'm just giving you information here, right? Now let me encourage you. Let me give you encouraging information as well. Since 2005, when this church was founded, we've given together over $4 million. We've given away $388,000 to the planting of new churches. Almost a third of that was outside the United States to work that God is doing in other places in the globe. We've helped to start 13 new churches, and we've given away almost $150,000 to partners in the city like In Common Community Development. So there's a lot to celebrate. We have been generous. But what I want to call you to this morning is to excel still more. There is more that we can do. God would call us to more. The gospel would call us to more. Now, here's my concern about preaching a message like this, is that I think it can be one of those things that's like inspiring or challenging or whatever, and you're like, okay, yes, I should be generous. And it's possible for you to walk out of here with a sense that generosity is good and no practical traction on what do I do about that. And as your pastor, because I love you and care about you, one of the conversations we consistently have in membership interviews and as we do baptism interviews and things like that is financial training and coaching. So what does it mean to just be financially wise? I was talking with a guy in my missional community this week. He said, man, my parents never taught me a thing about managing money. So everything I've learned the hard way by messing it up. This guy's 34 years old now. He's like, man, I think I finally know kind of how to not be an idiot with my money. Okay? That's a bad way to learn. So I want to be Uncle Bob for 5 minutes, okay? I just want to do like some practical financial coaching. We're going to go from sermon into like seminar for 5 minutes right now. And just let me give you 4 practical tips for financial health. Why? Just because I love you and I want you to have these, right? 4 things that just, if you'll do these things, it will help you a ton, not just to be generous, but to actually love life and enjoy what you have, okay? Number 1, live on a budget. It is ridiculous how many of you guys do not do this. How many of you guys just, money comes in and money goes out, and you don't know what it's going out for. You don't really know what's coming in. It's just kind of like bills come, I pay them. Somebody asks me to go out for dinner, I go, I just have money, and then I spend money. Here's what a budget is. It's setting aside categories of, here's what I'm going to spend on housing and on food and on entertainment and on gas, whatever. I'm going to stick to that number. And so guess what? When I use up that budget for the month, I don't eat out anymore. When I use up that budget for the month, I eat beans and rice for the rest of the month. Whatever. This is a baseline issue of financial responsibility. It's really hard to feel like you're in control of your financial life if you don't live on a budget. So this should just be a baseline discipline for you. If you don't have a budget, your job, your assignment from today is to go home and start one, okay? I use mint.com. They did not pay me to say that. We don't do like endorsements here at Corumdale, okay? It's just a really good tool. So that's one way. It's a well-built online budget tool. I'm sure there are others. That's the one I personally use. There's all kinds of tools out there to help you with this, but live on a budget. Number 2, follow the 10-10-80 rule. Here's what I mean. Save 10%, give 10%, live on the other 80. Again, baseline wisdom. Here's why. The 10% that you put in savings, here's what that's for. It's for when your car breaks down, when you have an unexpected medical bill, when the air conditioner stops working, right? All the things that happen in life, you're like, oh man, I didn't plan on that. Why do you have a savings account? So you don't have to pull out a credit card to pay for that and then pay it off for the next 7 years at 22%. Saving is just setting yourself up with a backstop so that the crazy things that happen in life don't kill you financially. Save 10%. Second, give 10%. This is the biblical discipline of tithing. And listen, we talk about tithing at Coram Deo because it's just a baseline spiritual discipline. Giving 10% does not mean you're a good Christian. Giving 20% doesn't mean you're a good Christian. It's not the amount that you give that matters. What matters is this. You're honoring the Lord with the first and with a disciplined amount of your giving. You should be giving more than 10%. That should be your goal, to give lots of your income. But look, setting aside 10% and saying, I'm giving this to the Lord, it's untouchable, it belongs to God, I'm going to invest it in ministry and in mission and in things that God is doing through my church and through other agencies. That's a baseline spiritual discipline. The thing that David and his people are doing in this text is a free will offering, which in the Old Testament was over and above a tithe. Okay, so they're giving in addition to money they've already set aside just to say, this is for the Lord and his work. And then live on 80, okay? Live on 80% of what you make. Spend less than you make. Guess what will happen? You'll be old and wealthy. I mean, you might not be wealthy like Warren Buffett, but you will have a positive net worth because you will have savings. That's a good thing. Now, some of you guys are going, how do I live on 80? Because right now I'm living on like 110 and it's not working very well. That's why I got all these credit card bills, right? Here's your answer. Either reduce your expenses or increase your income. Those are your two options. Credit cards are not real money. I know the government doesn't know this, so I don't know why you should know it either, but credit is not the same as money, okay? You can reduce your expenses, you can do something else. I was talking to a church planner just this week. He said, man, our expenses were getting high. We're having a hard time staying in budget, so I picked up a job training CrossFit for $120 a month at my gym. Because I was there anyway, and I figured, man, I'll certify as a trainer, and that way I can make a little extra money. That's the kind of thing some of you guys might have to do. But follow the 10-10-80 rule. Third, invite help and support. I mean, you realize, right, that as Americans, we have this idea that finances are secret. That's personal. We don't talk about that at parties, right? You probably shouldn't talk about it at parties, but you should talk about it. It's okay to say, look, can I get some help here? Hey, here's a friend of mine that's actually kind of wise in this area. Would you help me out? I mean, invite people in your missional community into this area of life. Listen to me. There's someone in your missional community who's a financial genius. Someone, I promise you, in every missional community that's just really good with money. In my missional community, I have a woman who's a top-level financial executive at a multinational, multi-million-dollar company. Of course I'm going to ask her for help. Hey, why wouldn't you? So invite help, invite accountability. If you need coaching, if you need assistance, ask for it. Invite people into this. Listen, we have a financial team at Coram Deo. This is part of the way we ask them to serve you. They serve our church by being stewards of the resources that we give and making sure we're making wise decisions. Part of the way that we ask them to serve the body as a whole is to say, look, if there's people who need financial counseling, who need help setting a budget, who need help figuring out how to pay off debt, that's what they are there for. And so if that's you this morning, if you just like, man, I could use some help, come talk to me after the service. I will connect you with one of those people. They would love to help and serve you. Because listen, we want our church to be financially healthy. We want all of us to be at a place where we're wise managers and stewards of our resources. I want you to know to become an elder or deacon here at Coram Deo, one of the requirements is you have to go through a financial interview with the financial team where they ask for your 1040s from the last 2 years, your household budgets, any debts and obligations that you have. They lay all that out on the table and look at it and basically say, are you being responsible with your money? And are you giving generously? And if you're not, you don't get to be an elder or deacon. So I'm just saying that to say everyone who's in leadership at this church, we take seriously their obedience to Scripture in this area. That they are wise and sound financial stewards who then can lead our church to be the same way. Invite help and support. Finally, this is for those of you who are students. If you're a student, I get this question all the time, so I just thought I'd throw it in here. Give on what you live on. Okay, here's what I mean. A lot of you, especially if you're a med student or a PT student or a pharmacy student, you're living on loans to pay your tuition, and then you're living on loans to actually pay your living expenses. Right? And you're just saying, I'm going to owe the government $500,000 when I'm done, but oh well, we'll figure it out because I'm going to make $500,000 a year. Good for you. We'd love for you to give when you make $500,000 a year. You should start now. Okay? And here's why. Because giving, tithing, is a basic discipline of I'm going to choose to live modestly and honor the Lord with my income. And so if part of the income you're receiving, even if it's loan income, is to pay your living expenses, you should give on that portion of it. Now, you need to be shrewd and wise with that. It might be wise for you to seek counsel on exactly how to do that. But you need to build this habit now, because the earlier the habit of saving and giving is built, the more likely it will become consistent, and you will actually become not only responsible, but generous. So my kids, I had a daughter, made $20 last week, babysitting. Guess what? $2 she's putting in the offering this morning, because I'm trying to train her in this. Just discipline, generosity. All right, that's Uncle Bob's financial tips for health, all right? I hope you enjoyed that seminar. Let's get back now to our regularly scheduled sermon, all right? Let me bring us back to where we began, because this is the point of all this. Or the point is, here we see David come to the end of his life. We see the legacy he's left of knowing God, and what does it mean to be a person who knows God and walks with God and worships God and lives for God. And at the end of his life, the emphasis, the place where the writer of Chronicles wants to put the emphasis is on David's generosity. Knowing God makes us generous, because knowing God changes our mindset, our motivation, and our method. So listen, David was a very generous man. Most of us are never going to have thousands of pounds of gold and silver laying around to just give to the Lord. That's not our reality. Can we agree on that? If you have that, God bless you. Most of us don't. So what does it mean for us to follow David's example in this? And more importantly, what does David's example and practice in this point us toward? See, David was a very generous man, but you and I should be even more generous. Why? Because God has been more generous with us than he was with David. What did God give to David? He gave him a kingdom. He gave him authority and responsibility. He gave him honor and power and prestige and riches. And David acknowledges in this prayer, God, all that stuff is yours anyway. It's yours to give. It's yours to take. It belongs to you. But see, what God has given us that's so much more valuable is he's given us his son. He's given us himself. David, at his point in redemptive history, was still looking down the corridor of time, hoping for the Messiah who would come, the one whom God would send to make all things new. You and I live on the other side of the cross. God has already given to us his son. He's already poured out his generosity toward us in the giving of himself. In Jesus, God gave himself completely to us. And so how could we not, in gratitude, give ourselves completely to him? When we see and understand the great generosity of God toward us in Christ, it makes us into a generous people. God has given much to us. Therefore, we freely give ourselves to him. And so, God, we thank you that you've given yourself. Thank you that you did not stop at being generous to your people in the Old Testament. You didn't just give us David as a picture of your generosity and what it sometimes looks like. But you gave us the story of David to point us to the greatest gift that you've ever given and ever will give, and that is your Son, the Lord Jesus Christ. We thank you for your lavish generosity to us in sending Jesus, and your lavish generosity in canceling all of our sin, and as Doug reminded us earlier this morning, the cost of your love for us, which was the life of Jesus Christ himself. So God, we know we have no right to that. We did not deserve that. You were freely and generously, graciously self-giving. And I pray that reality would land on us in a new way this morning. I pray that you would help us to connect the dots this morning, that if we take your generosity and spiritualize it into something that pays our eternal debt, but that doesn't translate into how we live now, we've missed it. So, Father, I pray that out of your tremendous generosity to us in your Son, we would be turned into a generous people. I pray that we'd be known in the city of Omaha as a church that is generous, as neighbors who are generous, as people and family members and friends who are self-giving and generous and liberal with what we have, because everything we have is ultimately yours anyway. Out of your generosity to us, renew our generosity toward you and toward one another. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.